Microsoft is currently one of the largest publishers in the game industry. With the purchase of two major publishers, Bethesda and Activision Blizzard, the number of IPs is now out of the count. Even before Microsoft bought game studios, the company had many classic and lovely franchises. Unfortunately, for unspecified reasons that the majority of them are related to commercial failures, Microsoft has forgotten a lot of these games. Fortunately, right now, we're seeing the return of old and important IPs including Fable and Perfect Dark, but there's still a vacancy for many other titles in the Xbox lineup. Note that this list does not include Bethesda and Activision titles. Banjo-Kazooie's series of games was created by Rare Studios. There is a bear named Banjo and a big red bird named Kazooie, both controlled by the player. Banjo initially attended Kong Racing as a playable character. During various games, the two characters are tasked with thwarting the various evil plans of a witch named Grantilda. The first game of the series, Banjo-Kazooie, was released in 1998 and received critical acclaim. After that, 3 sequels and a racing game and spin-offs of the series were released. It is interesting to note that this franchise was initially monopolized by Nintendo and its consoles. The first version of Banjo-Kazooie was released in 1998 for Nintendo 64. The game's meta displays an extraordinary score of 92, reflecting the importance of this franchise in the not-too-distant past. The franchise first debuted on Nintendo 64, and subsequent works in the series also appeared on Game Boy Advance and Xbox 360. Then the 3 main titles of the series were released as part of Rare Replay on Xbox One. The franchise has been largely silent since the release of Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts in 2008, however Banjo-Kazooie characters sometimes appear in titles such as Sega's All-Stars Racing series and Nintendo's Super Smash Bros. Series. With the purchase of Rare by Microsoft, the right to create and publish Banjo-Kazooie games was awarded to Microsoft. The downside is that since Rare was purchased to date, only one version of this fascinating and entertaining series has been released by Microsoft. Banjo-Kazooie's qualitative and commercial success made the series a huge fan game. The only request from fans from Microsoft is to build a reboot or remake of the series, so that we can watch Banjo and Kazooie on the scene again. Jade Empire is an action and role-playing title developed by BioWare and released in 2005 as an exclusive game for the first Xbox console. This title was later published for PCs as well. macOS ports, 2008, and Android and iOS systems, 2016, were managed by Trans Gaming and Aspyr, respectively. The game takes place in a world inspired by Chinese mythology. Players of The Last Monk control the surviving spirit in an attempt to save Master Li and defeat the forces of the corrupt emperor, Sun He. The story of the game is guided by a linear narrative. By selecting different dialogues, the player can influence both the story process and the process of the game in different ways. The development of Jade Empire began in 2001 as a dream project by Ray Musica and Greg Zeschik, who becoming executive producers of the game. The game, which was one of their earliest role-playing experiences, reused the mechanics of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, but suffered changes in the design of its fight system. Many game elements such as the fighting system, the world, language made for game and music are influenced by ancient Chinese culture. After the release, the game received positive feedback, but sold less than expected. Probably the same low sales caused Microsoft to forget the whole IP and not cooperate with BioWare to build its sequel. Following the release of the console version, the game was also ported for PC and attracted more fans. Titled Blinx the Time Sweeper was a platform game developed by Artoon and released exclusively for Xbox by Microsoft Game Studios. Blinx the Time Sweeper, promoted as the world's first 4-dimensional action game, was streaming on a cat and humanoid character named Blinx, who was on a mission to prevent the end of the B1Q64 world and save the princess from evil Tom Bon. Blinx is equipped with a TS-1000 vacuum cleaner with which it can control time through 5 unique ways: reducing time, increasing the speed of time, recording instantaneously in time, reversing time, and stopping time completely. A sequel to the game, Blinx 2 Masters of Time and Space, was released in 2004. The first game was met with contradictory critiques at the time, but fans were generally amused by the experience of the work. The story of the second episode would have put you in the role of 2 different characters. The player either had to play the Wizard of Time, humanoid cat, or as Tom Pig, to avoid catastrophic global danger by finding 8 pieces of the Great Crystal. Some of Tom's pigs accidentally destroy it after discovering the legendary Big Crystal. As a result, time broomsticks and Toms clashed. Overall, the story of Blinx's two games was intensely entertaining and interesting. Unfortunately, no version of the series has reached the manufacturing and release stage since the 6th generation in the first Xbox console. Due to Microsoft's numerous collaborations with independent game makers and relative dominance over 32 different studios, it is hoped that we will see the return of Blinx franchise to the game industry as an action game developed in 2002 by Smilebit and released by Sega for Xbox. This was the title of the first version sequence, released in 2000 for the Dreamcast console. As a re-adaptation of the first version, the game had improved mechanics in gameplay, graphics, environments, worlds, characters, soundtracks and overall design. Players control members of a street gang who use inline skates to cross advanced Tokyo, sprinkle graphite, challenge rival gangs and evade authorities. Like Radio Jet Set, the game also uses cel-shaded's graphical style. Jet Set Radio Future received critical acclaim for its gameplay, music and artistic style. The game won numerous awards and was nominated for many other awards. Players can navigate through ambient rails and slingshots and showcase various tricks while skating. Perform different tricks on the air, skate backwards and use boost to move faster. When a player is skating, he or she can quickly stop by performing an advanced linear movement called a slide power. The game won the Super 88 meta, and experienced fans achieved indescribable entertainment. Undoubtedly, in the list we collected in the video, the Jet Set Radio title deserves more than any other title. The Jet Set Radio Future game had little commercial success for Sega, selling only 80,000 copies in the US in its first 6-month sales period. The game sold only 28,433 units in Japan, which could largely be linked to weak Xbox sales in East Asia. Title Cameo Elements of Power is an action and adventure style game developed by Rare in 2005 and released by Microsoft. The player controls the character of Cameo, a 16-year-old elf who must travel across the land and save his family. While this person head brings elemental sprites and fighters together, she has to fight in beat-em-up style against the trolls who get in his way. Cameo's 10 elemental powers allow her to become different creatures and use their varied abilities to solve fighting-driven puzzles and progress in game levels. The game generally received favorable reviews, but its sales estimate fell below expectations. Critics applauded Cameo's graphics as a standard for the new Xbox console and praised its live art design. The main criticism was critics of the gameplay. Problems such as repetition, unpleasant control, easy campaigning, uneven introduction of features and bad training were among these criticisms. Critics disliked Camo's story and character, but largely liked other characters and the original concept of story formation. Apart from the game camera, they praised orchestral music and other technical features. Rare released several packages of downloadable and online content for free to play. A year before the release, Games Radar Media wrote that despite the high expectations, they thought the game's ongoing delays were likely to damage the quality of the final product. Eurogamer's Tom Bramwell expected the game to be the best among the Xbox 360 launcher titles. At the time, they compared Cameo to the titles of The Legend of Zelda, calling it a weaker version of Nintendo's popular franchise. Xbox chief executive Peter Moore had named Cameo as his favorite game on the eve of the Xbox 360 launch. Either way, Cameo Elements of Power was Cameo's first and last version, and we hope Microsoft will consider the return of this IP. The title Crimson Skies is a game in the style of Arcade Airplane and Flight, developed by Zipper Interactive and released in 2000 by Microsoft's game publishing division. Although Crimson Skies is a flight-based game, it's not a real flight simulator, as the game focuses less on realistic aviation mechanics. According to Jordan Wiseman, Crimson Skies is not about simulating reality, it's about realizing fantasies. The game is narrated in another history from the 1930s, in which the United States is divided into a number of smaller sovereignty, in which air travel has become the main mode of transportation in North America. The focus of the game is on Nathan Zakari, a pirate and aerial adventurer who seeks to plunder the wealth and power of the rich. During the fictional section, Zakari leads his pirate group in a quest for fame and fortune. The Crimson Skies game is often regarded as a relative success, as it did not succeed commercially as it should and perhaps did not. The game generally received favorable reviews. They admired the game for its quality sounding, fun gameplay and fascinating atmosphere. However, there were significant technical problems with the popular game, the worst of which was the deletion of the game's save files, which sparked outrage among many fans. The average score of 83 game on the Metacritic website shows that the Crimson Skies game was a high-quality title. Given that Microsoft has the best airplane simulator title with Microsoft Flight Simulator, it is expected to succeed in the field of arcade as well. Restoring Crimson Skies and its simultaneous support alongside Microsoft Flight Simulator can bring great profitability to the company. MechAssault is an old exclusive game released for Xbox and was also one of the first games to support Xbox's online multiplayer system called Xbox Live. The construction of the game MechAssault was started by Day One Studios and Microsoft, when Denny Thorley informed Microsoft of his ideas. MechAssault was released in November 2002. The sequel, called MechAssault 2 Lone Wolf, reached audiences on December 28, 2004. Both games happen in the imaginative world of Battletech. The MechAssault game had several playable modes in which players could get involved in the fights. In Grinder mode, the player tries to survive as more mech enters the battle. This mode could have been played with 1 or 2 players. In Destruction mode, which resembles Team Deathmatch, the player can choose a mech and fight against other players. In the case mentioned, the player or team with the most kills wins. Capture the Flag mode is a team game in which the opponent's team is at the opposite end of the map and tries to seize the enemy flag without surrendering its flag. The first version at the time acquired Meta 87 and the second version of Meta 81, so that both games were successful titles in satisfying audiences and critics. As of July 2006, the game sold 750,000 copies and earned $26 million in the United States. The total sales of the MechAssault series reached 1.1 million copies, which seems to have not yielded Microsoft's satisfaction, and that's why we didn't see another version of MechAssault. The Conker series is a series of platforming games created by Rare. Conker's events tell the story of a red squirrel who first appeared as a playable character in Diddy Kong Racing. Conker Games was monopolized by the Japanese company's consoles at a time when Rare was signing various contracts with Nintendo. The first version of the series, Conker's Pocket Tales, was released in 1999 for the Game Boy Color console. The game flowed from a top-down viewing angle. Conker's character explored large environments to find his stolen gifts. Players opened access to the next stage by collecting a certain number of gifts in each area and defeating a boss. In addition to running and jumping, Conker could use his abilities to solve different puzzles. The first version of Conker was not welcomed for a variety of reasons and received disastrous scores. However, things changed with Conker's Bad Fur Day in 2001. The game, which was monopolized by the Nintendo 64 console, was so good and influential that analysts refer to it as a revolution in the platforming style. The second version earned an unparalleled Meta 92. Unfortunately, this version was the end of the interim success of the Conker series. With Rare purchased by Microsoft, a new game under the name Conker Live and Reloaded was released exclusively for the first Xbox console. Although Live and Reloaded was a total high-quality product with the acquisition of Meta 78, it was by no means able to replicate the successes of its previous version. Since the 6th generation until now, no other version of Conker has been introduced and released. We are all aware of Rare's status. 3 of the titles on this list are owned by Rare. Microsoft should make more use of the forgotten and unique Rare IPs. Splosion Man is a 2.5-dimensional platform and action video game developed by Twisted Pixel Games for Xbox 360. The game was released on July 22, 2009 as part of Xbox Live's Summer of Arcade. Players control a character named Splosion Man, a runaway scientific experiment sampler who can repeatedly blow himself up. On his way through obstacles and traps, he attempts to get out of the imaginary big science lab. The Splosion Man game received a lot of positive reviews and was selected by Xbox Live players as the best XBLA game in 2009. IGN Media ranked the game 11th on Xbox Live Arcade's list of top titles of all time. The Splosion Man game experienced good sales and sold more than 487,000 copies by 2011. A sequel titled Ms. Splosion Man was released for the game on the 13th of July 2011, which of course failed to repeat the successes of the first version. The character Explosion of the game plays the role of Jump and can also be used to kill enemies, destroy walls, blow up barrels of explosives or do other things. The main character can explode up to 3 consecutive times and replenish his reserves during a short pause. The first version of Splosion Man consisted of a fictional mode consisting of 50 stages and 3 bosses that we could also experience as co-op. This series is one of those franchises whose return may not be necessary, but it can recreate sweet and enjoyable moments for gamers. Overall, Microsoft's forgotten IPs are more than can be incorporated into a video. Microsoft can bring all these games back to the industry if it wants and wills. Microsoft's new and annual event is approaching, and the introduction of a new version of the titles on this list is unlikely. Most of the games mentioned were not welcomed by gamers due to their low sales and unique style. Given that fans of standalone games and platforming have become more popular than before, perhaps some of these titles can be hoped for. What do you think? Most eager to return which franchise? Share your ideas and opinion with me in the comments section.